Welcome back to Taylosive Movie Review, once again, starring your co-host Mike and not Nick. We have
or Randy.
Or Randy either. We've got Drew on today. Welcome to the show, Drew. How are you?
Thanks for having me. I've been trying to get on this show for years. They wouldn't let me on, so I'm so thankful. Nick finally quit, and I can fill him in now. So I forgot the part where that's my problem.
Yeah. Definitely. So, as you can tell by my shirt today, and probably by the title of this podcast/video, however it's going to go, we are.
You were prepared.
I am prepared. We are reviewing Spider-Man from 2002, the Sam Raimi series. Our goal is to review all these Spider-Man movies before Spider-Man No Way Home. So it's a way for us to get refreshed and also the audience as well. So if you want to join us on this incredible journey, you can. If not, you just want to listen to certain ones, you can. Or if you don't want to listen to any of them, that's fine as well. I don't know how you're hearing this message, but...
I'll be offended if you don't. This is crucial. Everyone needs to watch this, especially after the Far From Home trailer dropped. I was like, okay, we need to go back. All this is canon now, including the Sam Raimi trilogy. So I'm sure you've seen it in the past, but how did you feel most recently rewatching it?
It was interesting. So me and Nick, I don't know if you listened to any of the podcasts that we did, Drew. We usually rate movies out of 8.
Yes.
So if we were following Nick's, or I guess the show's original rating system, I'd probably give this, in the moment right now, I'd say probably like a 5 or 6.
Okay.
It was captivating still, even at the age of 26 I am. And enjoying, I guess, how innocent and campy the world was back in the day, with just very interesting narratives that Sam Raimi was trying to follow, and different character traits that he was injecting into the storyline.
Right.
It's a whole different world. What about you, Drew?
Very different. I give it a solid 6. I'll put it right at 6 because I think that the biggest word that jumps out at me for the first film was classic. Like, if you think of what superhero movies were like before that film, this was kind of that like perfect blend. Raimi kind of captured that like comic book feel without being too campy. But on today's standards, it's very campy. But like if you compare it to, Batman and Robin, which was coming out just a few years before this, and how like cringy and how bad a lot of superhero movies were back then, and compare it, like I think this aged a lot better than the first, not the first, but the early 2000s Hulk.
Oh yeah.
This one has that like classic hero's journey encapsulated in like a positive, uplifting way, but still not taking itself too seriously, right? It's like not Batman Begins serious, but probably the campiest shot in the whole movie is when Goblin throws one of those charges and everyone turns into a skeleton all of a sudden. I laughed so hard at that shot. I was like, oh, that didn't age gracefully, but
no, there's a lot of shots in this where the animation is very much early 2000s of like, what
very
are they
early
doing? This man looks like rubber. Or
yeah,
like,
right.
You could definitely tell this took some guy on a computer at least a month to try to complete.
Oh yes,
and
very early computers.
Maybe timetables were just not in his favor, and so you just had to quickly cut corners in some regards, and so you get
I'm sure they did.
Looking great in some regards, like on the bridge fight scene. I think him swinging around didn't look too bad. But
yeah, that aged pretty well. All of the mechanics of the web shooters and swinging and stuff, for the most part. Or yeah, his wrists. Sorry,
I
forgot.
Out of him.
We're not at web shooter yet. But I think what Sam Raimi, or maybe it wasn't Raimi, whoever the casting director was for the first film, I think did a great job, because I think Tobey Maguire, after I've seen all the Spider-Man at some point, so I'm interested to do this all over again to kind of direct compare them. I've seen the Andrew Garfield films, and of course I've seen the Tom Holland films, but I've never seen them in a row like this. And I think Tobey Maguire has captured that nerdy Peter Parker feel alongside the superhero role very well. I think Tom Holland does it great as well, but is it a different style, like a different approach, and I always felt like Maguire was way better at playing Peter Parker than Garfield was, just because Garfield was like too cool or like too swagger. he's too good looking. I can't help it. Tobey Maguire just got that like awkward teenage phase down in this film.
Kind of, yeah. Though I would say they very much lean heavily into he's a nerd. The whole entire bus at the very beginning is just like we don't care that he's running blocks. Like no one, even the bus driver's just like, I don't care. This is funny. It's like what the heck? And then
he's got puppy eyes.
At the same time, Peter walks into the bus and like you look at everyone, they don't look like they're teenagers. At least from
it's not realistic.
Eyes. Yeah, it looked like they were definitely maybe mid-college or something like that, and from my observations. But otherwise, it was just like, this is weird, but okay, I guess I'll get behind that. I think the way that they got behind or around it was that they're seniors, so they were going to graduate really soon. Right. So they just looked really adult. I mean, to a kid, a senior looks like an adult. I remember as a freshman, I'm like, whoa. That dude's an adult. And then I become a senior. I'm like, I'm still a kid. I don't. Like, there's not much change. Anyways,
it is funny how that works, though. I thought the same way. Like everyone at that age looks like adult, and now I see seniors and they look like babies to me at this age. I'm like, oh, that's what I looked like. I was in that age at senior year. But you're right. The school bus thing was very on the nose. Like, I'm late for school, you know, but they're all in their 20s and 30s. Makes more sense when you're older.
Things are very much over the top in this movie as well. There's scenes like, I guess, Osborn when he's told by the government, like, you have only a few days to get this done to get our contract or whatever, or else we're going to cut your funding and then you're going under. And so then it leads to Norman Osborn, like, sticking a vial or drinking a vial or whatever, and then immediately like throws it across the room. Like, this guy's not a scientist.
No, though I love the pacing, that scene in particular of Raimi's films, because he really sets up those characters efficiently. It may not be the most realistic or believable, but like within like a 40-second scene, you establish Osborn's like funding is cut. He's a scientist. He wants to do this, but he can't, so he has to rush it. And you're like, okay, motivation set up, done. It like it all flows together pretty well, which is what I love about probably the first half of the film, is just how quickly everyone, like the first scene practically Peter is in is when he gets bit by the spider and gets home immediately, feels all weird, and then the next day he's Spider-Man. So it's like everything is paced really quick, which I like.
I'm glad you mentioned the pacing. I forgot how much is in this movie. There's a good, decent,
there's a lot.
5 or 10 minute like compilation of Spider-Man saving people and doing all these amazing things. And I don't remember that as a kid. I just remember him swinging around a couple times. But they definitely show off who Spider-Man is. Though it's very quick transition. You go from like dude in like a very bad wrestling cloth thing that he thinks looks like the suit that he drew. And then immediately after Uncle Ben dies, I guess spoilers. Anyways, Uncle Ben dies.
What?
Not again.
Who knew? How could we possibly know?
He immediately somehow, like, I don't even know how he makes the suit, but he makes the Spider-Man suit with the iconic, like, beaded, or not beaded, but very extruded lines on it of the web and all that. And
there's not much backstory on how he...
No. It's not like he found some seamstress or like he took time to like figure out how to use a sewing machine with Aunt May or whatever while low key trying to make a suit. But he's like, oh, Aunt May, how do you do this or whatever? Like, that would have been interesting. But I guess Sam Raimi's like, no one cares about that. They just want him in the suit.
Yeah. Yeah, it's like, we know what we're here for. Let's get him in a suit as fast as possible.
Mm-hmm. The one thing
it's very efficient.
Yeah. The one thing I was definitely looking forward to in this movie that I enjoyed watching again, in which I wish there was more time, and so did my wife Carrie. She and I watched this together last night. Was J. Jonah Jameson?
Yes.
Played as J.K.
Oh my God.
Played by J.K. Simmons. Oh my goodness! Every single second of him on the screen is golden.
Such a wonderful actor. I like how, I watched it with my friend Ross and my wife Louise, and uh, everyone would kind of tune in and out for different scenes, but whenever he was on screen, everyone stopped. Everyone stopped what they were doing so they could hear every word because he talks so fast and everything, and every line of dialogue is so, like, he was born for that role, I feel like. I believe that's the first role I ever saw him in. Like, as a kid, I saw J.K. Simmons in the first Spider-Man, and from this film, it's always been like, oh, that's the Spider-Man guy from every other film I've seen him in since then. But yeah, he was beautifully casted, as was William Dafoe. I feel like he fits that campy, happy, evil goblin persona so perfectly. Like, I can't think of someone else that's as good as playing that role. Whenever I see Green Goblin, I just hear that evil Dafoe voice so clearly. I can't imagine anybody else playing it.
His acting was fantastic. I noted to my wife when, or at least maybe she noted to me, one of us brought it up, was how great his acting was in some of the scenes where he's just talking to a mirror to himself. And obviously you can tell, like, initially they try to show, like, oh, is he actually talking? No, he's not. But then, like, you can kind of see as he's approaching the mirror, he's just talking to himself. You're like,
right.
Oh, he's actually, like, definitely crazy. Like, it's not like some weird, like, mind game that's going on in his head. It's actually him talking to himself. And it just gets more creepier and creepier every single second of that scene and for the rest of the movie, especially near the end where he tries swindling Peter, just like, it wasn't me. It was the goblin. I love you, Peter. Please come here.
Yeah, it almost felt like he was still struggling with himself up until the last minute.
Maybe in a way. There's definitely probably some theories out there that would say he's probably still in the transition phase from Norman Osborn to Goblin. But I would say at that point he was far gone just because you could tell, I don't know. He was reaching for his gauntlet.
He was reaching, and I can tell he was struggling, obviously, because they were fighting, and then he's like, last second, wait, don't punch me. But the one line that makes me think otherwise is he says, don't tell Harry. That's his last words. So it's like the last thing that went through his mind. I also love that shot, by the way. We were still quoting that shot up until this week of, like, God, what does he say? Godspeed, Spider-Man?
Spider-Man.
He presses the hovercraft to come right at him, and then there's just all this motion going on, and the camera pans around, and Peter jumps up, and then Dafoe goes, oh.
It's like a cut of, like, him going, oh, but, like, his arms are down.
It all gets quiet, and the camera's static. That made me laugh so hard. I don't know if it was trying to be comedic, but it came across hilarious to me.
I think it was more of like a, not bittersweet, but like a terrifying comedy in a way of, like, it's acknowledging what's the event is going on at that very moment, but at the same time Sam Raimi trying to say, okay, well, it's still kind of a comic action movie. We don't want to scare the kids too much.
Can't be too violent. Yeah,
too violent or too cold. Let's add in maybe a line here of him saying, oh, so then you get kind of a little bit of a laugh of, like, yeah, you just kind of dug your own grave, man.
Right. But I think it summarizes, like, that line says it all. It kind of summarizes how he thinks, how he feels, the instant regret, in a very quick, very well-paced, efficient manner of just like, oops, like, shouldn't have done that.
Definitely.
So I'm super glad he picked that role, because I can't imagine anyone else playing it, and it sounds like Kevin Feige can't either. So that's where it's going.
I'm really interested in seeing who they bring in for the new movie that we're building up to, I guess.
Yeah.
But definitely iconic. Every single scene with him was very interesting. It was very beautifully done as well. His motives were very clear from the start and throughout.
Not too confusing.
Yeah, no, he wasn't, like, I mean, it was kind of weird when he's in the burning building pretending to be a lady and then starts trying to kick Spider-Man's butt. But
did that scare you? I found that still somewhat scary, like that jump when he's, like, going through the burning building. I hadn't seen the movie in a long time, and when he turns around and screams, I was like, whoa, it still gets me. Because
it was leading up to that scene where, like, there's someone else still in the building. I'm like, how did Spider-Man forget someone else? And then like Spider-Man's talking to the police captain while this supposed lady's burning in the building. Like, go up there and save her. Why are you having a conversation?
I love that scene too, because they're like, we gotta arrest Spider-Man, and Spider-Man's just like, I'm going up, and the cop's like,
come back here.
Okay, come back when you're done. That's such a realistic moment too, because it's like, legally, I'm not supposed to endorse this, but please go help her.
But please come back.
Yeah, please come back. We can arrest you afterwards.
But yeah, I forgot about that until he was walking up to the lady. I'm like, oh, that's right. This is the moment where Goblin is pretending to be a lady. And then you get... I was getting real Matrix vibes this whole movie. I'm like, why am I getting huge Matrix vibes? And I looked up when The Matrix came out, which was, I think, 1999. Yep. And I think this was supposed to come out in 2001, but it ended up coming out in 2002 due to 9/11 with a few shots that they had of the skyline.
They had to refilm a lot, yeah.
They had to refilm a lot. But yeah, I'm just like, why are there so many slow-mo shots in this? I'm like, oh, that's right. It's the early 2000s where everyone was so inspired by The Matrix. So...
And it just came out, yeah.
Everything is just slow-mo at this point. So, yeah.
They kind of had those close-up macro shots, too. Like, I laughed quite a bit when the blood dropped from the ceiling when Peter was hiding. Because it's like... Sauce. Yeah, it becomes marinara sauce as it hits the floor. It suddenly gets way too wet. And somehow Osborn sees it, or hears it. He's like, what's that?
Yeah. At that point, I take notes just to make myself remember during these podcasts of like what happened. And I think I wrote at that point just like, okay, apparently Norman has super hearing now just because he took some chemicals and had a huge vape room that he hung out in for a little bit and had a heart attack.
Right. Maybe it does that. You got notes. I got to take notes next time. I'm somewhat of a movie critic myself.
The memes.
There.
The amount of memes.
There's so many good memes.
I forgot about. Especially, I'm some of a scientist myself, or you can't do this to me.
Right. I don't know. I forget the part where that's my problem. Yeah. That's a good one. I use that a lot in my daily vocabulary.
Yeah. There's also one where, Peter walks in. He's like, hey, everyone, sorry I'm late. It's a jungle out there. Right. Had to beat an old lady to get this. Which is right after the blood drop scene or whatever. Which,
right.
Such a weird comment. Such a weird comment. It's just like such a weird circumstance of events. They're like trying to play like the tension of balancing Peter Parker and Spider-Man. But it's like he jumps into the room. No, he jumps onto the wall above where the main cast is, where they're about to have Thanksgiving dinner. And then they're like, is Peter up there? It's like, how do you hear something hitting like the concrete wall, a floor above you? Okay, right. And then he hops in, and then people go up, and Peter's first thought is, I'm going to take off my mask, not hear anything with my spider-sensing ears or whatever. And then as soon as they're about to turn the corner, I guess I'll just jump up instead of like, jumping out the window or like anywhere else. I don't know.
There was a lot of tension when like Aunt May slaps
Norman.
Defoe's hand, slaps Norman, and he's like, it's so weird. It's like casual and intimidating at the same time. Aggressively licks finger. I want to see what. It's funny because I want to see what the script said for that scene, and yet Defoe played it so straight. It works. Like, it flowed okay for me, at least.
What I also love is, like, even after Defoe realizes, like, he goes upstairs, hears the blood drop, and then looks outside. Like, you would think, oh, maybe he's suspicious or, like, knows that it's Peter at this point.
Right.
And then he goes downstairs. Peter has the cut on his arm.
Yeah.
He's just like, how'd you get that cut again?
It's right.
Like, you did it. You saw it.
Right. You were just there. Right.
You have to confirm this right now?
Yeah.
I don't know.
There was some bizarreness there, I guess, in the plot inconsistencies. But we've talked a lot about what we liked and things that stood out to us, but we're still giving it a 6 or a 5, somewhere in there. So I'm curious what you docked points for or what prevents it from being a great film for you. I know that for me, probably the biggest frustration was the MJ monologues.
Oh my goodness, there are so many MJ monologues in this.
I thought they were so bad. Like, they did not flow well. They were repetitive, and I felt like they didn't fit with the pacing of the rest of the movie. Like, everything else moved so quick, and it was like, okay, we set up his motivation. Okay, we understand Harry. We understand Norman. We understand this, and Peter, what he wants to be, and the regret he feels. But MJ just goes on and on and on whenever she starts going off these little tangents, and I don't think she has much to say.
Apparently she has a whole bunch, but at the same time, none. One
Right.
scene that I remember about that circumstance, or at least that critique, there we go.
Teak. Yeah.
Critique is just like the scene where Aunt May is in the hospital, and she's like, I like Spider-Man. And he's like, well, I know Spider-Man. She's like, oh, have you told him about me? And then Peter goes into this long, drawn-out, like, speech about how amazing MJ is. And I think that's when she realizes, oh, I kind of like Peter just because he told Spider-Man how amazing I am. But, like, it goes on for, like, it seems like an hour of just, like, him describing. I think at that point I just started looking at my phone. I'm like, I can't listen to this
It's
anymore.
very dragged out. It is. I think the pacing was kind of... I don't know if it was casted poorly or if they were just... I feel like they're good actresses, both Aunt May and Kirsten Dunst, I think is her name. That's right.
Kirsten Dunst.
They're both decent actresses. It's just, I think they give them too much material. They're like, we need this heartfelt dialogue scene, and they wrote like 3 paragraphs of stuff to get through. And I feel like that was improved a lot more in the later films. I don't remember it as being a bigger problem at the Garfield or the Tom Holland movies, but I'll have to come back to that later. It might be, I don't know.
It's nice that we're going through this whole entire sequential order so we can compare
Right.
Aunt May's and Spider-Man and Harry's, I guess, since there's multiple Harrys as well.
The Mays get younger each time.
There's so many. Yeah, I'd say, commenting on that, I think Aunt May was fine. It makes sense that she has some wisdom to pass down just because that was kind of her and Uncle Ben's like role in this movie is to provide guidance for Spider-Man or for Peter Parker. And they're meant to kind of give him like the boost, or at least the morale boost of like, hey, stop being hard on yourself. It'll be okay. And I think that, in my opinion, it definitely gives him like the push to be a better superhero and a better person rather than like kind of how he was with Ben, where he's just like, I don't want to hear any of this. I'm just going to go get some money so I can buy it.
Stop lecturing me, please.
I totally forgot about this, but like the main drive for him to go get money was to buy a car so he can impress MJ. It wasn't to like, it wasn't for him to like prove his skill. It wasn't for him to practice or like challenge himself. It was kind of just like, I'm just trying to get $3,000 so I can buy like a Pontiac or something like that.
Needs to impress the girl that's in a relationship already. I thought that aspect was a tad cliche because
oh my goodness,
the boyfriend she's with is clearly so dumb and like, what is his name? Flash Thompson. Was that someone else?
Yeah.
I wouldn't want to fight me neither. It was such a cheesy dialogue, but I kind of love it. It was like, I say cheesy, but I like cheese.
Yeah, cheese is good. I have moldy cheese. I had to throw it away this morning. But
yeah, that's the bad kind.
Side tangent. I didn't really like MJ's character at all in this movie. I forgot how promiscuous she was, just to like any strong man. Like, oh, Flash Thompson is strong and
he's
big.
so buff.
I love
I'll be
him.
with him.
And then at the end of graduation, never mind, I don't like you. And then Spider-Man shows up. Oh, I love Spider-Man. And
she talks like very intimately with Peter, even though she's in a relationship. And she's like hanging out with him in the backyard and getting really close and asking him about his feelings and stuff. And
what are you gonna
And then
do?
she makes out with Spider-Man.
Yeah, while she's in a relationship with Harry, I believe. Yeah.
Yeah.
She goes through
He's
so many
kinda-
men in this whole entire movie.
Kind of two-timer a
She
bit.
goes through
Yeah.
Flash, and then Harry, and then Spider-Man she has a thing with, and then wants to be with.
Mhm.
Then at the very end of the movie, I love you, Peter Parker. Peter Parker's
Yeah.
just like, try me.
Yeah, right. She just opens herself up, and he's like, "No, it's too
Friend
dangerous."
zoned.
She got friend zoned by Tobey Maguire. Can you imagine how that feels?
Especially
Oof.
the kid who's had a crush on her for as long as, like, what was it? I think since 4 or something like that, or 3.
Yeah. Long-term childhood friend.
Also, the amount
Yeah, I think I agree. Just MJ's just kind of inconsistent and kind of dumb.
And Peter is very creepy in this movie. A lot of the lines that he says are just really, really not. I don't want to say the word cringy because that's a little bit like throwing it into a bucket, but very much like, please stop talking. You're making me uncomfortable. I don't know how MJ, the character, is supposed to feel, but I feel really uncomfortable. I don't know if that's what Raimi was going for, but.
It did come across campy, I think. Just the whole relationship side of things. It was probably like a sophisticated, like big-time producer trying to write teenage dialogue and not really knowing how to make it relatable or realistic. So it just comes across as awkward.
Yeah.
That scene, I don't know if that ever felt natural. If that was bad when it came out, or if it's just bad now. I can't tell.
I don't even know. Just even. What stood out to me was when he's just like, I cried like a baby when you played Cinderella.
I forgot that line.
MJ's just like, that was the first grade.
Like you imagine a first grader crying watching Cinderella. I don't know.
Happiness
that felt like
does exist.
That line needed a tad. That sounds like a first draft line. You know, they should have read through that part of the script and been like, so that we need to change that to something. He needs to say something heartfelt about MJ, and it can't be, I cried like a baby when I watched you play Cinderella. He does have like a very soft voice too.
Oh, jeez. Yeah. One thing that stood out to me, or at least who I didn't think get enough time in the spotlight, was obviously Bonesaw. Bonesaw was the best character in this movie as well. I'm being very sarcastic. He was a very hilarious character. Just like typical like early 2000s WWE type of like scenario when
you going nowhere.
You in the cage with Bonesaw.
Right. Oh, that reminds me of how the last second way they came up with the Spider-Man name when they introduce him.
Yeah.
Man Spider.
What's his name? Bruce Campbell, who's the announcer.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah.
I forgot.
I saw his face. I'm like, I've seen this guy before. Who is he? And then, it's Bruce Campbell. Nice. But
he snuck in there.
He's like, human spider? Nah, man.
Human spider. That's what the first name was.
We got to do something better than this.
Yeah. That's believable. I like that part because it sounds like something Parker, he's not intuitive or cool enough to come up with that name, so he came up with Human Spider.
Yeah.
And someone else gave him Spider-Man. He was like, "Oh, okay,
he's
that
just
works."
like, he got the name wrong. The guy's like, just go.
Go. Right.
Shut up.
It stuck. Right.
Yeah, it was, though also like you'd think a lot of these people who went to like this underground, or maybe not underground, fighting ring, because it seemed like anyone could get in there and get into the ring.
And they buy newspaper ads.
Yeah, they buy newspaper.
Like they just let anyone off the street. Also, the lady at the doorway, that's a famous actress, Oscar-winning actress. I forgot her name.
Spencer, I believe. Is that
Octavia
Octavia
really?
Spencer? Octavia.
I'll double check.
Yeah, we've seen her recently, I think, in Hidden Figures and a bunch of other movies.
That's what I saw her in. Yeah, she's a great actress. You're right, Octavia Spencer. She's been in a ton of stuff, and it was funny to see her in a Spider-Man movie. It's like, this is a little cheesy for someone like Octavia.
It's very early as well. I saw her, I'm like, she doesn't look like she's aged much. And
No. She's aged very wonderfully.
Yeah, I look at her back in the movie, and then I looked her up as well just to confirm it was her. I'm like, wow. Like,
she was in a bunch of stuff early on. We saw her in an episode of Malcolm in the Middle a while back. Yeah. There was a bunch of actors that were in that show that were way bigger later on. It was bizarre.
Huh.
I think Jeanette McCurdy from iCarly was in several episodes, and she was very young. She was like the young like kindergarten class. We were like, "Whoa, that's Jeanette."
Yeah,
But
kind of
anyway,
like School of Rock type of era almost for her.
right. But yeah, there's a bunch of Bruce Campbell and Octavius and Miss Oct.
Yeah, very interesting cast. But I guess to go back to your original question of like why I gave this like a 5 or 6 out of 8.
Yeah.
It's a memorable movie and it was an enjoyable watch, but I think just the amount of like maybe not inconsistencies, but just different directions this film goes, but then tries to meet it back at the very end while also having very interesting dialogue and very campy. I don't know.
Sure.
I think maybe as a kid I very much enjoyed it because you just care about Spider-Man swinging around. But as an adult, at least I have a little bit of an expectation of like things that I want to see from this character. I want to see him get developed, his motivations and all that, and then see him maybe in action, maybe not in his prime, maybe he gets into his prime at the very end of the movie, but at least like to some like learning experience. Where in this movie it's kind of just like he spends one evening climbing up a wall and then saying Shazam while trying to make
Go Web. Yeah.
And then suddenly it's nighttime and he just missed out on painting the whole kitchen with Uncle Ben. But I don't know. It's just like
yeah,
maybe
it does
it was,
feel kind of handed to him.
Yeah, I don't know whether it was like the timing that they were going with. It just seemed like Raimi was trying to hit a lot of checkboxes, but wasn't thinking about the in-between bits in a lot of them, of like going from losing Uncle Ben to transitioning to being Spider-Man, which was like 3 minutes or like 5 minutes, maybe 5 minutes, I don't know.
It wasn't long though.
Yeah,
it moves quick.
It goes from like the robber guy tripping out the window to him swinging around as Spider-Man within I think 5 minutes. And I just thought that's a really. There's also a lot of weird transitions too. One that caught my eye, or I thought was the most hilarious thing, is I think Goblin flies into Quint Aerospace or whatever, blows up the pilot in the flight suit.
I forgot.
And then
I forgot that scene.
Blows up the bunker. And then in the fiery explosion, it suddenly transitions to graduation caps flying. And
I forgot that.
I'm like,
that was good.
You're going from like a really dark scene of like, whoa, he's gone off the edge. He's blown up a lot of like military generals to, yay, we're graduated.
Yeah.
And this is all like right after. Okay, so I guess actually think about it, these are the scenes right after the robber tripped out of the window, right after Uncle Ben dies. But it's just like really weird transitions that something like that was just off-putting for me. It was more hilarious than, I guess, not admirable, but I guess it wasn't appreciated in my circumstance.
Okay. That's fair. Yeah, I think that when you have fairly surface level motivations that aren't too complicated, I think that they're kind of multi-dimensional characters, but they're pretty straightforward. Like MJ's is very like stupid in my opinion. Like MJ's character is always just like, big man, or now I'm in love with this person, now I'm in love with this person, and I can't decide what I want. And Peter's just like good, puppy dog eyes. He's like, I want to help people, I don't want to be mean, and I feel bad about what happened to my uncle because I'm partly responsible. But my wife was defending him quite a bit. She was like, how was he supposed to know? Don't act like it was his fault. He had no way of knowing that guy was gonna go shoot Uncle Ben. It's like, come on, it was indirect. If he would have known, he would have intervened. It's like, come on. But I think I get what they were going for.
Yeah, it's a lesson in the fact that you can't let things slip.
Yes.
When you're trying to do good. You have to try your all and do the best you can, rather than
I got that.
Let some things pass. But
sure.
As well, it's kind of just like, okay. I guess the guy who robbed the wrestling guy decided to steal some old man's car and shoot him.
Right. It is when you have characters that aren't super in depth and they're kind of basic and surface level, it kind of takes away from the immersion a bit more, and it makes you feel more like I'm just watching this to pass the time. I'm not like super invested or super interested in what's going to happen. I can just kind of, it makes it more predictable, basically. You're like, I can tell he's got bad motivation, he's got good motivation, and I think that later on the movies try harder to get the motivations a tad more intricate and detailed, but yeah, I think they did an okay job for like the first is this like the first feature like theater debut of a Spider-Man film, or was there one before this? I can't remember.
I think
I know there was a show.
Yeah, he was on TV, I think, in Japan, and then I don't know if there's one in America as well. But I think this was the first major like Spider-Man movie on the silver screen.
Yeah,
which is what makes it special.
As a first step, I think that was a amazing standard that everyone had to beat basically from then on out. Like someone considering they've never done a Spider-Man film before on that type of budget and that large, they got the basics down. But yeah, in hindsight, you can be like, this didn't really make sense. I didn't quite get this, but sure.
One thing that I did find very accurate was New Yorkers polluting the Atlantic while throwing a whole bunch of junk at Green Goblin on the bridge scene.
Yeah. You mess with all of us. Right.
Which you don't see in these movies anymore. I mean, like, if you look
That's
at
true.
Spider-Man Far From Home, you don't see a scene where the New York, or I guess the London people are like, hey, you mess with all of us because we're London people. I'm sorry, Europeans. But
there was a lot of New York pride they were boasting about.
Very much. But it's very much like, why are you guys throwing junk at, like, this guy who obviously can, like, spear you or, like, shoot you with a weird laser blast or missile, I guess. Like, run,
sure.
Get off the bridge. Do you see what's happening with the gondola? Get out of here.
Yeah. He had a bit of dark humor, too. Like Itsy Bitsy Spider he's singing as he's blowing everything up. I thought that was, like, a bit hammy, but in character with Green Goblin.
It's not the last time we'll hear it, because we hear it again from Electro, I believe, in Amazing Spider-Man 2. Which I remember at the time.
I forgot about
everyone's like, did you notice at this point in the movie where he starts humming, or like every time he's moving around from generator to generator, you can hear the tones or the notes of Itsy Bitsy Spider? I'm like, oh, that's interesting.
Wow.
But like, this totally went over my head. But again, very interesting choices that these directors take of like, yes, it's Spider-Man. Let's put in a spider song because
it's got to be on theme.
It's got to be on theme.
Yeah. That's what happens when your director is Mark Webb. I feel like that's the only reason he got that job.
Oh, definitely.
Sony was like, Webb? Ha, that's funny.
Webb.
You should direct it.
Spider-Man.
They were made for each other.
Perfect.
It's
perfect. I guess one character that we haven't really analyzed is James Franco as Harry Osborn.
Harry, yeah. I thought he did a generally good job portraying the character, but he doesn't come across super likable. Like, even in his very first scene, he's like kind of annoyed with Pete, and then he takes one of his nerdy lines and uses it to try to impress MJ. I'm like, yeah, you kind of get from the beginning that they're friends, but you're not exactly sure why. He's kind of a jerk.
I think it's because Peter desperately needs a friend, and Harry just wants some type of normal life in some regard. And of course, everyone's going to treat him like some rich kid, where Peter is arguably a good person and is not going to like exploit Harry's father's riches for his own good. And he'll treat Harry like a person. So I think that's maybe why Harry kind of sticks around, is because he knows Pete likes him for him, but he also knows that he could take advantage of Pete anytime he wants, especially when getting a girl, even though she has a boyfriend at the time, which is,
that's a good explanation. I never made that comparison. They kind of have a mutual. Well, I guess Pete doesn't. Pete's mutual request is he just wants a friend of some kind, and everyone's kind of annoyed by him. And then, yeah, you're right. Harry wants that normalcy. That's a good. That's a good point.
I don't know if it's parasitic in some regard, but it's not always a two-way street. Sometimes it's a one-way street for mainly Harry.
Yeah.
But they definitely, I think they didn't do a bad job in portraying like who his character is. He's the son of a rich guy and is struggling with the fact that like he doesn't know what he wants to do or what he wants to be and how to fit in. And so he kind of takes solace with Peter and then gets just lost in the moment. Where he's just trying to, because he's got this towering figure of a dad he's trying to impress, he ends up pushing everyone else further down, like MJ.
Right. Yeah.
Which is an interesting complex that they give to him. But
yeah, he is a pretty complicated character, I guess, when you consider all the emotions he's dealing with. And, of course, it gets worse later, I'm sure. But, yeah, they set that up pretty well. Once again, shout out to whoever casted this movie, because I think he fit that role pretty well. And he even, like, kind of looks like Defoe, just a little bit.
There's that initial scene similarities with them in the Rolls Royce, and I'm like, I guess I can see what they did here. It doesn't look too bad to where, like, man, they really had to give him highlights or something like that to make him look like Defoe or Defoe to look like James Franco. Right. But it wasn't a bad pairing, and I don't know. I thought it was funny, or not funny, but it was delightful to see a young James Franco on the screen again.
Yeah. This was the first film I saw him in as well, I think.
Yeah, I don't remember him in any other film. I mean, probably, I don't even remember him in this film, honestly. As a kid, I probably paid more attention to him when Spider-Man 2 came out, or, of course, Spider-Man 3, because in Spider-Man 3 has a bigger role. But definitely as a kid, went under the radar.
Went over it. He weaved you. He weaved the radar. Yeah. My wife said the same thing. He showed up on the Rolls Royce, and she was like, "Wait, James Franco's in this and Defoe?" I was like, "Yeah, this is an all-star cast. You got everybody in this movie. You got Octavius, you got J.K. Simmons, you got who's the guy who announced Spider-Man?
Oh, Bruce Campbell.
Bruce Campbell. You got everybody.
You got
Tobey
Elizabeth
Maguire
Banks as well. My wife picked out Elizabeth Banks as Betty Brant, who is J. Jonah Jameson's assistant of some sort.
I forgot about that too.
In which she's like, "Why does she look so familiar?" I'm like, "I don't know who she is. Let me look her up." And it's like, it's Elizabeth Banks. She's like, "That's it." And she's like, "She kind of looks like what's it called?
Evangeline Lilly.
Yeah,
the Wasp.
The lady who plays the Wasp. Because I think it's just because of the haircut.
The hair looked very similar.
Just kind of how the face is shaped as well. But yeah, definitely shout out to the casting director again. I don't know how many times.
Didn't she act kind of like flirtatious with Pete after he met with JK?
No, I didn't get that when I watched it just yesterday. Okay. I got annoyed because he's like, "I take photos," and she's like, okay.
I just remember her getting, maybe it was the second film, I just remember her getting slightly flirtatious, and because Louise pointed out, she was like, "Why doesn't he date her? MJ sucks." She's like, "You just hang out with her."
You definitely
there's probably
there's
a plot age gap that doesn't show up on screen.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, the age of characters in this universe is very ambiguous. Like I mentioned at the very beginning of this, like, these high schoolers look more like college students, and then the people who are working look like the high schooler or college student age, but they're not. So you're kind of just stuck in this whirlpool of, like, I guess everyone is around the same age, so you can tell that J. Jonah Jameson is some old. It's like either old guys or kind of younger people, and you've got no middle ground. I maybe like,
that's how they casted it. Is like, this a young person or an old person?
The closest thing to a middle ground is J. Jonah Jameson's other assistant, the African-American fellow, who you can definitely tell.
I'm trying to remember his name. Yeah.
I can't remember his name either. He's not old, but he's not young. I think he's the only
he's kind of right.
And
right
Bruce
dead
Campbell.
center.
Well, no, Bruce Campbell still has some silver hair, I think, in that shot as well. So.
Oh, true.
Yeah. I don't know.
It's
Yeah.
funny. There's all these high schoolers in their 20s. Yeah, they knew who they were catering towards. This was going to kids. They knew a lot of children would be watching.
Definitely. I also kind of going back to the final scene of this movie.
Mm-hmm.
They throw everything into the scene, even though that it's kind of like in some old castle / greenhouse thing. Like,
Yeah.
they've got martial arts going. They've got some quips and dialogue going on, and then even at one point, Goblin gets crushed by a brick wall and then just gets up afterwards.
Oh, right.
I mean,
I remember that being like a consistent issue with the Raimi films, is just people getting way too hurt and damaged and then just walking away from it.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like Pete taking a huge fall, hitting a brick wall, and everyone just being like, that would kill you instantly. But he just gets up because I guess he's Spider-Man, so he's strong.
Yeah,
So-
or the parade scene where Goblin goes and blows up a bunch of things, and then there's debris falling everywhere. And I mean, of course, maybe some people got hurt, but they kind of show that like Spider-Man was there to save the day. You even get Stan Lee at one point going like, "Whoa!"
That's right. Yeah.
But it's
Was that one of the earliest Stan Lee cameos? Or how many cameos was he doing pre-2000?
He was in. Well, when did Hulk come out? I think Hulk came out after this, of course.
Yeah. Hulk was 04, I believe.
I don't know if he was in the older Hulk.
He must be. I'm sure they weren't the first ones to come up with that. But it's one of the earliest ones I can imagine in my Marvel films I've seen.
Yeah, I mean, his name's plastered all over the movie as well as writer.
Oh, yeah.
And, or not screenplay, but at least, like, he was given a lot of credit, which
Sure.
I admire Sony for doing. Like, they didn't have to do that, but maybe they had to give due diligence because they just bought him, I guess.
Right. They had to. See, they're like, see, we work together. It's okay.
Yeah.
But
Thanks, Sony.
thanks, Sony. They're never letting go of that title.
I don't think they
Yeah,
want
Marvel. No, Marvel sold them when they were in a desperate hour, I guess. But now they regret that. I'm assuming with all their heart.
to. Yeah, though I guess it would be in this alternate universe, I guess a multiverse, since we're going to multiverse stuff.
Sure.
It'd be if Marvel didn't sell off Spider-Man, the Fantastic Four, and X-Men, would they have survived through that time period where no one was really buying their comics and they're going under just because comics were becoming less of an interest and movies were becoming more of a thing? Like,
True.
Would they have gone through that, or at least like been able to protect their assets through that tough time? I don't think so. I think
That's hard to know.
I think they would have gone under, and then all their assets would have just been spread out for the taking, and maybe Sony would have had Iron Man as well. And I can only imagine a Sony Iron Man.
Oof.
Or like a Sam
I'm
Raimi
glad that
Iron
didn't
Man.
happen. Yeah. I'm very glad that didn't happen.
Just some dude who's
But it's
touting a cigar, drinking all the time. He's like, I'm Spider-Man. Or no, I'm
Yeah.
Spider-Man. I'm Iron Man.
I'm Iron Man now.
I'm Spider-Man too.
Yeah. I'm impressed by how much of a lasting impression this film has made, despite like a lot of it still feeling very campy, fairly cheesy, pretty hammy dialogue, and yet like the community of people that still know very clearly about the Tobey Maguire Spider-Man and like how they intermix him with all the other Marvel films and that whole side of YouTube and how often it gets quoted, like it's, I think, very, very enjoyable to watch, and but a lot of it involves laughing at the movie. It's like the premise is so ridiculous, or the character says something so terrible that you're laughing. So it's like, it's not a bad experience watching it, but it doesn't necessarily mean the film is good. It just has a form of entertainment value, even if it's not the best form.
Yeah. I think Raimi would comment on that saying, I offered you my friendship and you spat in my face.
Right.
Yeah.
That's good.
No, I agree
Yeah.
though. Yeah. It definitely, this movie, it's got some spark to it where
Yeah.
you remember it, you think about it, like the lines from it, the scenes from it, the weirdness of it. It's definitely in the front of your mind of just like, was that movie real? Like, do I remember that correctly? And you go back and watch it, it's like, oh yeah, but then you also realize there's a lot of faults in this movie as well.
Sure.
And so I mean, I would say no movie is without faults necessarily.
Yeah.
But it's very much, I don't know. It's that place of nostalgia that people look towards in the early 2000s of a more innocent time in some regards, where people weren't worried about looking at their phone all the time, or like they weren't always connected. You have scenes where Peter is gone throughout the day and night, and Aunt May and Ben don't know where he is, and he comes in late at night, and it's just the meatloaf's in the fridge. Get it when you want, kid, or whatever. Like,
yeah.
It's an interesting time.
I gotta drop him off at the library.
Yeah, or I gotta go drive him because I need to exercise or whatever. In New York. Why would you drive in New York? But it's very much just, it's a nice flashback to how things were.
Yeah,
and also how
it's a nice little time capsule.
Yeah, I guess that's what I'm trying to get to. Is it's a nice capsule of time capsule that people can look back on and enjoy, and that's what I kind of see in this series, or what I see in this movie and probably the rest of the series, is it's very much just kind of simple on some levels, right? You don't have Green Goblin trying to destroy the universe. He's just trying to kind of take over New York, and that's like maybe his goal. Try to get Spider-Man on his team, otherwise he'll do it himself. Like, there's no reason to invoke the world or anything like that. It's more of just become huge major crime boss who has control of everything, and that's it.
Right.
Which, it's a nice refreshing, or a nice breath of fresh air, right? It's not like Thanos trying to snap everyone into non-existence. It's just some dude who's...
And like a million characters too.
Yeah.
You got to keep track of all these plot lines and all these stories. It's very simple.
There's a lot of characters that we have in here as well, but it's not like you're trying to track what Betty Brant is doing in the office. You don't even have to keep track of what J. Jonah Jameson. They line him up right there. Like, he doesn't like Spider-Man. Even if the villain is there, he still doesn't like Spider-Man. That's it. That's how it's always going to be.
Yep.
We don't need to know what he's doing on his off time, though I guess they can't inject some of the, your wife's calling about the why.
Yeah.
But yeah, I guess to summarize my thoughts, very much a nostalgic trip of just being able to see kind of how life was, even though this is like a very fictional comic book movie, kind of how the world was and how culture was at that time, and be able to get kind of a re-glimpse into what was life back in those days, because of course, probably for me and you, we were very much little toddlers kind of going into grade school.
Sure.
Not
we were
really
the target demographic, basically.
Target demographic for the movie, but we didn't really get to live this time like many other people did. So it's fascinating kind of revisiting that.
Yeah, and it's aged a lot from this point, and I think it was a really good starting point for the rest of the Spider-Man films, which have changed a lot over the years, and now, of course, are getting more and more complicated and intricate, but I think that's okay, because it's like, we've done simple. We've gotten the simple ones down, the basic plot lines. Now it's time for advanced, complicated timelines and very intricate character emotions and stuff. So I think that for the first Spider-Man debut, that was a great way to launch it, and surely wasn't flawless, but man, could have gone much, much worse. And if it would have gone much worse, we probably wouldn't have gotten more movies.
Indeed. Which is why I appreciate the movie for what it is, which is why I gave it like a 5 or 6, because it set off this precedent of superhero movies in a way. I mean, there's probably other ones that came out, but it definitely was like, here's where you have to be a good superhero movie. So you either have to at least meet those expectations or go a little bit higher, which I think is what they do in the second, third one, which we'll discuss.
Sure.
And then how
we'll get there.
The world kind of gets there as well, with Fox doing it with the X-Men and trying to attempt it and do it in a sort of way that was both kind of campy, but also just very serious tone in a way.
Yeah. Somehow both.
Yeah.
Right.
Campy, serious movie.
That's how I describe X-Men as well. Very campy, but very serious.
It's an interesting series. Me and Nick had a fun time. We didn't even explore the the 2000s era. We just went straight into 2010 basically, or 2009
Wow.
and above. But yeah.
What a timeline.
I think that's what the enjoyable thing is about these movies, right? Like you get 3 movies of like Tobey Maguire, then you get 2 movies of Andrew Garfield, and it's not like they're connected in any way. It's not like Doctor Who where you're trying to keep track of the timeline in a sort of way.
Yeah.
It's kind of just restarted. Unfortunately, it was restarted really quickly, so you're like, oh wait, Spider-Man's back, but it's not Tobey Maguire. What happened?
Yeah.
I thought Sinister Six was supposed to be a thing, but I guess not.
Sure. Yeah. Do you think Tobey Maguire and other characters from this movie are going to fit fairly well in No Way Home? Or do you think they're going to feel out of place at all?
It depends how they approach it, right? They can kind of go like an old man Peter sort of way with Tobey Maguire. Like, he's existed in his time for so long, and he's kind of become a more matured Spider-Man, or maybe he's done being Spider-Man and he doesn't want to be that role anymore, and maybe he'll be just a guiding voice. Or they'll just bring back the whole campiness of everything. I mean, heck, they've got Doc Ock back, which means it's some alternate timeline of Sam Raimi's universe in some manner, I think. Unless he just never died, I guess, but that'd be kind of weird. It kind of...
I'm curious if they're going to let Sam Raimi direct certain scenes in No Way Home, because he is the director of Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness. So they're working with him.
Maybe,
the original creator who directed all these actors. So similarly, I think in Infinity War, they had James Gunn direct a lot of the scenes with the Guardians of the Galaxy, because they wanted it to feel in character for them, and he wanted it to flow the same way the movies did. So I'm curious if Kevin Feige will do something similar with this, of like, we want to recapture that Raimi feel, but who knows? Maybe they don't like the Raimi feel. Maybe they're trying to avoid that.
Or maybe they'll just try to get a sprinkle of it and that's it, because there's only so much runtime for a movie. I'm sure if they're trying to pace themselves but also deliver something action-packed and a spectacle, it's going to go around 2.5 hours to 3 hours. And so it's just going to be, I don't know, how much time do you want to give Tobey Maguire if he's in the movie, which many people suspect, along with Andrew Garfield as well. Like, how many interactions do you want to go for? Like, how much universe crossing do you want in terms of Doc Ock and Green Goblin? And if you put MJ in there, it would be interesting if MJ, Kristen Dunst's MJ is in there.
She has not aged gracefully, I'll add. Not as much as Octavius. They should get her back.
I thought you gingers were supposed to support each other.
No, we have no soul. We don't have to help each other out.
I guess she's blonde, so never mind.
Yeah, there you go.
Never mind.
See, I do look out. I do look out for the gingers. That's just not one of them.
Gotcha.
Oh, she was in some movie recently, and she looked much older. I was like, oh man, you have strayed far, strayed far from the Spider-Man days.
Well,
I always felt awkward about that kissing scene where he's upside down. It just looks weird.
It is weird. Also, I'm thinking during that scene is like all the blood is just rushing to his head. He's just like, please, just kiss me and leave.
I was just imagining her instantly pulling the mask off, like mid-kiss, be like, Peter, what? Yeah, like she totally could have revealed him very quickly if she wanted to, right then and there, but she didn't.
Apparently not. I guess she was too respectful for her noble hero who saved her from 2 random New Yorker shady guys who were just like, hey, look at this broad.
Right.
Let's just...
Yeah.
Are we doing this, boys, right here, right now? Let's do it.
We doing this? Yeah, that's New York for you.
Apparently.
I don't know. I've never been there.
Really?
I hope to.
It's an interesting place.
That's where all the Tobey Maguire films take place, right?
Maybe.
They're all in New York.
Yeah, Great Gatsby's there.
They never really stray from that.
Well, except I don't really
Well, I guess I meant all the Tobey Maguire Spider-Man films is what I meant.
Oh.
1, 2, and 3.
I'm like, yeah, I guess Great Gatsby's there, and what else is there?
I didn't mean all Tobey Maguire, but I guess maybe it is.
Yeah, but I guess that's kind
I
of
don't
like
know.
Spider-Man's motif. Like he's a New Yorker, or at least like he's in the New York area. I think that was
Right.
maybe the special thing about
Far From Home.
Far From Home is that they took him to London, which I think is in the comics as well, but it wasn't
Yeah.
done on screen before, and it was a very nice change of pace.
Right.
Anyways, any last thoughts, Drew, on Spider-Man 2002, I should say, because we've got like so many different Spider-Man movies that we
Closing thoughts, I guess. It's very enjoyable. I found it very entertaining. Only reason I'm not giving it a higher score than 6 is just because it's not a particularly, there's still a lot of errors, like plot-wise and technicality-wise. There's things that didn't age very well, and I think there was dialogue that needed to be cut, but even bad attributes can be entertaining. So I still recommend rewatching it. If you haven't seen it in a long time, I'd still say give it a watch. It'll make you laugh, especially with the right group. Maybe if you're in the group that doesn't enjoy kind of bad dialogue or campy scenes, it won't be as fun. But just don't take it too seriously.
no,
It'll be great.
grab a tub of ice cream or some popcorn and
Yeah.
enjoy how everything unfolds the way it does. And maybe don't read into it too much. Probably take it at face value in some regards. It's not trying to be Inception or anything like that.
No, this is not a complicated film. Don't think about it.
No. But yeah.
How about you? Any closing thoughts?
Well, I'd say this movie definitely makes me a lot more excited for Spider-Man 2. I think that's the one that I remember most, which we'll probably talk about in that.
Yeah, we'll get there.
But otherwise, no, I enjoyed watching Willem Dafoe on the screen again, and I enjoyed just again peeking into this time capsule and seeing what things were like and why directors, or maybe not why, but what directors did and why they did it in some regards.
Yeah.
Or like what choices that I think they did and why I think they did. I'm not too sure. But otherwise, it was a solid film. I mean, it's the first time we see Uncle Ben die, and it's not going to be the last, unfortunately. But,
oh, no. Poor Ben.
Yeah.
How many times do we have to teach you this lesson, old man?
Basically. Yeah, I guess the lesson is don't go on a gondola or a tram in New York, or else you're going to get attacked by some superpowered villain.
True. And if someone asks for your car, just give it to them. Don't resist.
Yeah, definitely that.
Just give him your car. It's not worth it.
Even if you own a Model X, just give it to him. He'll just crash.
Would have been a fascinating episode of What If Uncle Ben didn't die.
Yeah, that'd be interesting. We should definitely cover that at some point. A what if? What? There's
would he still become a superhero, or would he lean into the revenge side of things? I don't know.
I don't know, or maybe he'd just have Uncle Ben help him. It'd almost be like Into the Spider-Verse, where you've got Aunt May kind of being the brains of a lot of things, or at least being almost like the Alfred in a sort of manner. Otherwise,
yeah.
Thanks for joining us, everyone. Appreciate your time, and you can catch us again whenever we come out with the next episode. I'm still trying to figure out when I'm going to post these, but otherwise, hope you all have a good morning/day/evening, and we'll catch you later.
Godspeed, Taylosive.